Hi, I'm Joe.
And I'm Mike.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And today, we'll be reviewing Steve Jobs.
Just reviewing Steve Jobs as a person, not the movie.
Welcome to the second episode of How Many Fingers, featuring two guys getting hammered and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And this week we're drinking Forgotten Boardwalk's 1916 Shore Shiver IPA. It's a cracker open.
That is certainly an IPA.
Yeah, that's a buy.
I am not a fan of IPA, so this is going to be a
I love IPAs.
hard one to pour down my throat.
I'm gonna enjoy this. It's gonna be a good episode. What are we talking about this episode, Joe?
I'm going to cry a lot. This week, we're reviewing the Steve Jobs biopic, aptly named Steve Jobs, which depicts the Apple co-founder, played by Michael Fassbender, in the final moments before 3 different product launches throughout his career.
So how did you watch this movie, Joe? I want to talk about the viewing experiences first, because I think that's always important to the movie.
Okay, so I went...
Set the scene.
Okay, so it's after I got out of work and I drove to a movie theater, which is called United Artists. Remember, like, that used to be a movie theater, like United Artists. But, like, it turns out I got inside and everything's Regal. That's all that's around me is just Regal. I kind of really like AMC. But
I don't think I've ever been to a Regal movie theater.
it's just all
Is
over
it Regal,
Pennsylvania.
or?
It sucks. It's like 12.
Not fit for a king.
It's $12.50 a movie ticket.
That's kind of what did we pay for AMC?
Like I think it was like 10 something.
It might have been because we were seeing an afternoon show.
All right.
at
Yeah,
AMC.
that's
I think it's
true.
usually like $12.50
All
or
right.
something like that.
But
AMC.
still, I enjoy AMC a little more. I just don't like Regal.
Fuck them.
Anyway, went in there, saw the movie. I feel like a lot of people really kind of zoned out, did not enjoy this movie.
Were you by yourself when you saw this
Oh, most
movie?
definitely.
Yeah.
I love seeing movies by myself. That is a pleasure point.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm totally sold on the seeing yourself movie experience.
Oh, that is my getaway.
I mean, part of it is cool because you don't have to like explain your feelings about a movie afterwards to someone. But the other part is like I felt like I had like anxiety the entire time because I was in like the head of everyone else who was in the theater, just seeing me like walk in by myself. I just felt like they were all thinking like, "Yep, this is it. This is the guy that's going to shoot up the movie theater."
Right? Yeah. No. Once again, just revisiting this fucking scenario. See,
Like I couldn't like get that out of my head the entire time that I was watching the movie. It was just like everyone's judging me for being here by myself,
never
watching a Steve Jobs movie.
never crossed my mind.
You didn't think about that once when you were in the movie theater by yourself?
Honestly, no. No. That's it. That's no. I mean, I think I was the only person there by myself. There was a pack of fucking teenagers behind me that wouldn't stop talking, and I'm the person who won't talk. But I'll turn around and be like, what's going on? Like not accusingly, like give them like I just kind of turn around and be like, hey, what are you
guys talking about?
What's all that noise? Kind of like thing. Like, is there something going on back there? Like, kind of like just
I
to make
hear
them
you,
feel
yeah.
uncomfortable. Right, yeah. Be like, what is that sound? Now that we've spent that time, how was your experience?
Well, that was it. Yeah, I felt like anxious the
Right.
entire time, just like being by myself. I mean, like I also feel like Steve Jobs is kind of like a weird movie to like just be by yourself in the theater for. It wasn't like some like major crowd puller that you like needed to see.
Right,
It was
right.
like, who's this weirdo going to see Steve Jobs by
I don't
himself?
know. I feel like more independent movies, I feel like that's more accepted to go see kind of by
Well, I was
yourself.
the only guy that was by himself in the theater.
Okay.
So.
Well, so was I. So
I'm trying to say I was real lonely, and I just wish he had been there with me.
So we just got to jump right into. I think I was telling this to Mike earlier, but this is the best way that when you listen. Again, a lot of people, like teenagers, like in the theater, were like not into the way this movie is structured. Is it's broken into 3 acts, and each act is before a launch of something. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
it's kind of almost like the ghosts of like Christmas past. I feel like.
Oh, definitely.
Like every product launch, before each product launch, there's all these people from his past that just keep coming to visit Steve Jobs, played by Michael Fassbender, and basically just bitching at him for what a horrible person he is every time.
That is definitely not. I mean, again, it's not exactly new, but it's not exactly what people like want to go to the theater and be like, I want to see Steve Jobs' life, and
it's not what you expect from a biopic movie either, because especially for someone like Steve Jobs, you're expecting like the typical like, oh, how did he grow up? What was he doing in his early years? What does Steve Jobs have sex like? How many drugs did he try?
Well, yeah, no, I talked to somebody at my work, and he's like, man, I thought I was going to see Steve Jobs do mushrooms. Like, or something like that. I was like, is that what you went to the theater for? Yeah, man, I thought I was going to see Steve Jobs do mushrooms, man. But,
damn it. Now I feel kind of cheated.
But anyway, I think that's what people wanted, and then I think there was like sort of this marketing push when I would listen to NPR, and I told Mike about this. I feel like they had like a 5-second spot to just be like, and they would say it like this. They'd be like, from the writer of The Social Network and the director of Slumdog Millionaire, Steve Jobs, the movie, which I think is a really accurate, like, people are like, oh, The Social Network, that had
those movies.
That had a pretty good screenplay, and Slumdog Millionaire, didn't that win Best Picture? Like, kind of like thing, like, it really, and it's also bringing in that sort of, like, alternative crowd from NPR to enjoy that. But, along with that is, I think we need to talk, it's just something that needs to be discussed, is, it was directed by Danny Boyle, who we'll talk about, but it was written by Aaron Sorkin.
The boy, Aaron Sorkin.
The boy. Who is just he's like a household name as far as screenwriters
I think
go.
at this point he's probably like one of the most recognized names just as like a screenwriter. Like, there's directors who's write and actors who write and whatnot, but he's like the only like screenwriter that is just definitely. That's all he does. That's just Aaron Sorkin. He writes movies. Right.
And yeah, no, he's probably the only household name. And I have written in my notes. This is what I have written in my notes. I have 2 Pitbull quotes. And it said, and like, if I don't know what my thought process was. It was, if Pitbull has lines like, my life's a movie, Martin Scorsese, and watch me make a movie like Alfred Hitchcock. And I feel like if Pitbull were to reference like, man, like, how do I compare myself to a screenwriter? Who's a screenwriter that I know? Pitbull, who I can imagine has a very limited amount of knowledge about films in general.
But he would know Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah, he'd be like...
And that's how you know that you've made it as anyone in the film industry is when Pitbull shouts you out.
Definitely. And
as far as Pitbull is concerned, there's only 2 people that are important in film, and that's Martin Scorsese and Alfred Hitchcock.
But I want to break down those 2 Pitbull quotes. Okay, the first one, obviously, Pitbull's life is so eventful that he can only compare it to a film. Which, like, most of which, like, a lifetime is just compressed into, like, 2 hours. And, like, Pitbull's like, that's what my movie, like, that's what my life's like. My life's like a movie, Martin Scorsese. But the other ones...
But it's also... watching that line, it's not like he says, my life is like a movie that Martin Scorsese directed. It's like he's saying Martin Scorsese is just another word for movie. Like a synonym. My life's like a movie, Martin Scorsese.
Movies, Martin Scorsese. And then the other one is, watch me make a movie like Alfred Hitchcock, which I'm pretty sure that one, he's just implying that he's about to make a pornographic film.
No.
Yeah.
No.
With a woman.
Pitbull would never.
Who may or may not know that Pitbull's recording it.
Oh, God.
I just feel like he's, like, breaking that third wall. Like, there's a woman, like, it's like, yeah, oh, my God, Pitbull. And he, like, turns to the camera. He's like, now watch me make a movie like Alfred Hitchcock.
So this is the thing that Pitbull actually says to women that he's about to record.
Okay, we gotta get back into this movie because I don't want to talk about Pitbull.
I mean, if you do sleep with Pitbull, just check for cameras in the room because he has been known to make movies.
Especially if he has some sort of like whisper inner monologue. He's like, "Oh, no, watch me make a movie like
Alfred
Hitchcock." He says it to himself.
Oh God.
Oh man. Anyway,
What did you like about the movie?
This was definitely a film written by Aaron Sorkin,
Yes.
and I think it was pretty complex. The way the writing was structured, because you had these three different
Product launches.
yeah, product launches. But
So you have what were the product? It was just the first Mac, right? Macintosh.
right.
And then he goes off and does the weird box, the next when he was actually separated from Apple, and then the final one is the iMac, which I guess that would bring you to what is that, like 1990 something?
I believe so, and but it's not just, it's like it is, and it's not just. I mean, maybe there's a total of like 6 or 7 different settings, but like in each product launch, they'll have like a flashback. And I liked that, because then it was almost like it would flash back and forth between a conversation. I really liked a lot of the way it was structured, honestly.
But even with that, like I think that was, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem that I have with the movie, but I came away being a little, kind of like your friend said, not getting to see Steve Jobs too much. I was almost a little disappointed with the scope of the movie. Whereas, like, I mean, there was a lot of things that Steve Jobs did, and I'm sure he had a probably pretty interesting life. And we really only get to see, like, kind of like a half hour at a time of his like time before product launches, which, I mean, who even knows how accurate like any of that really is. I think there was a little bit of a controversy in terms of like a lot of this just kind of had to be like fabricated in Aaron Sorkin's mind. Like,
oh, most definitely. Yeah. And did any of this really actually happen, kind of thing? And
yeah, because I mean, like his daughter is not telling anyone about these like behind doors, like really
These
emotional
intimate
conversations.
moments, yeah.
And Steve Jobs is dead, so he's not telling anyone about those conversations.
right, yeah. I mean, I know it was based off of a biography or something, but I mean, the film does like address that he's in like an argument, like that one like big argument between him and Steve Wozniak, played by Seth Rogen, and after I think Steve Wozniak storms off, or Michael Fassbender leaves. He goes like, gosh, like what is, like, I feel like everyone like goes to a bar before like these things, and it like
gets
tells me all
stronger
their
than
feelings.
yeah.
And it's a little like addressing like, hey, listen,
We know what you're watching.
we pushed all of these events, which probably happened over the course of, I mean, did Steve Jobs even have that relationship with his daughter? I don't honestly know, but
Depends which movie you watch, because I watched the Ashton Kutcher.
how was the cooch?
Just just Jobs, not Steve Jobs, just Jobs. And in that, they didn't really go into the relationship with his daughter at all, but they made it seem like everything was just A-okay between the two of them. Like, they have one scene where they talk about his lawyer basically being like, you have to sign this, otherwise you're never going to be able to see your daughter again, and you might want that in the future. And then they have another scene where like his daughter's on the couch and he's just like all buddy with her, like, and she's living with him at that point, which they never even go into in this movie, which it just left a lot out in between these like product launches. And they would like try to catch you up with like news footage and stuff, and that, I think that was my other biggest complaint with the movie.
Which one, the cooch?
No, there's a lot of complaints with the Cooch movie. That might even be a whole separate episode with the complaints I had with that movie. But with this one, is just in between these product launches, they kind of try to catch you up with like, news footage or like recordings and stuff like that. And they weren't really consistent in terms of like how that was presented. Like it was just different each time. And that's always like a pet peeve for me, is when like a movie can't stick with like a consistent style.
It was, yeah.
Like in between the first one, it's like, text like flashing over the screen.
Yeah.
Which, it looked cool, but then on the next one, they did this whole weird like, video in video thing happening.
Right.
It was just inconsistent for me and kind of bugged me.
And I think that doesn't as much derive from the screenplay as much as that derives from the director, Danny Boyle. This film...
Yeah, and he does kind of have that style of like...
Right. Like, was that his last film? Like, the editing style where it would, like, be like, oh, here's a time-lapse of traffic, here's the sky, here's the... Like, and it would be, like, all these, like, crazy, like, images, and it looked very similar to 127 Hours, which I believe was his last film. And did you see that?
Yeah, I did see
Okay,
that.
yeah.
James Franco.
Like, that movie was more like a music video because like the crazy imagery. I feel like
They did some weird things in this one too that
Right,
like
and I feel like
I've kind of forgot about
continuing that
until
trend,
now.
yeah.
Like there's the one scene where Steve Jobs is talking to his assistant, what's her, Joanna Hoffman, something like that,
in the hallway,
played
yeah.
by Kate Winslet, and he's describing this launch of this one rocket back in the day, and he's making an analogy to his personal life. But then all of a sudden, on the wall in the hallway that they're talking in, you actually see like footage of that rocket.
Right.
I was just, I mean, to me, that's like, I mean, we know what a rocket is. Like, we wouldn't recognize the actual rocket you're showing us anyway. We didn't need to see that like projected on the wall because it didn't actually happen.
Right.
It didn't really add to the scene at all.
It took away from
yeah,
the
it was
scene for
distracting.
me.
Like I actually stopped listening because I was like, oh, that's just a rocket that's just on the wall behind them.
Right, and it broke some sort of wall where it wasn't a part of the editing, but it was a part of the scene.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the only example of that. So I didn't like that either. I think I can understand why people thought it was a good idea. It's like, well, we have this long dolly shot, and we can't do that many more like close-ups or whatever. They wanted to switch it up, but like.
But it was, I mean, like the
didn't
writing
it,
was
though.
good there too.
Right.
Like it was, I mean, that was a good analogy that he was making about. I can't remember specifically what the rocket had to do with that scene at that time, but I remember thinking like, oh, I like where he's going, and then all of a sudden like the rocket comes out of nowhere,
Right?
And you're kind of taken out of it, and you're not even really paying attention as much as you should be to what he's saying anymore. And it would have been a fine scene to just sit on that shot of them in the hallway.
Yeah.
And Danny Boyle ruined it.
That's I hope. I don't know. Like I don't know why that's his new like editing style. Like 127 hours was unique. Something else I want to talk about is I did not like the score from 127 hours. I thought that was kind of bad. He was sticking with the same guy from Slumdog Millionaire. Who
it did kind of seem like he was trying to kind of capture the feeling from like Social Network. Like there were parts
Right.
where I was like, did Trent Reznor actually do the score for this? And I had to look it up, but it was not him.
It was. Did he? Now I gotta know who. I'm wondering if he stuck with the same guy from Slumdog
Full cast and
Millionaire.
crew.
Because it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. But like the first press conference.
Daniel Pemberton did the music.
Well, then I think that's a different guy because he had
Yeah.
an Indian guy doing the Social Network.
Oh, Jai-Ho.
Yeah, Jai-Ho. And then
Jai-Ho.
Jai-Ho guy did 127 hours soundtrack. But anyway, this one was like the first press was like it was kind of like inspirational music from that era. Kind of like, it was like like you
Yeah.
hear it on like a VHS. The second one was actually pretty good. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know that I liked it. One of them became like way too repetitive. It was like, my God, when is this going to end?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one was a fucking Coldplay song or something. What was that?
Yeah, that did come out
was
of nowhere at the
bad.
end.
Like, no, don't like add vocals to this all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm also not a fan of when like songs have vocals as like a soundtrack to a movie because it just kind of distracts. Like you're trying to listen to the vocals, but then people are
Right.
talking over it at the same time.
I especially don't
just
want
get an
fucking
instrumental version of
Coldplay,
it. Yeah.
yeah.
Was it actually in a Coldplay song?
It sounded exactly like a Coldplay song.
I don't know if that'll show up on IMDb.
It
But I'm kind of
probably
curious.
But what else was I gonna say? It's just in Danny Boyle's like line of films that he's done. I just hope the rest of his films aren't directed, like aren't cut like this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But I mean, I think even despite some of the weird editing choices, I did come away with like a positive experience from the movie,
definitely.
and I think a lot of it has to do with like the great acting.
Yeah,
And whether or not that's like true to what Steve Jobs actually was behind closed doors, whatever character Michael Fassbender created was hella interesting to watch.
Oh, definitely. And that's what I like to talk about is just like when somebody's like, well, the movie wasn't that great, but you had to like read the book first. And it applies to this. It's like, no, a movie is a standalone medium.
Mm-hmm.
How was this portrayed and everything? But let's talk about the acting because I
thought it was pretty good almost like all across the board, although I know you had a problem with Kate Winslet.
I did. I thought everybody was great. You know who I particularly thought was great?
I probably know who you're going to say. The
technical guy.
Andy Hertzfeld.
Yeah.
What's
he
his?
was
The actor's
great.
name is Michael Stolberg.
He, like, he looked so legitimate.
I mean, there were points in that, like, I know, I think it's before the third product launch, and he comes back, and there's like a really big scene
about like paying his daughter's tuition.
Yeah, he's revealing some stuff to Steve
like
Jobs.
Favorite. Yeah.
But there's like little things he does in that scene where like he like has to like physically grab his leg to like lift his leg up to hold it over his knee.
His body looked completely different.
Yeah, he definitely gained weight, I think, for that role.
So like where Seth Rogen just looked like the same person in every single product launch. Like this guy, the Andy Hertzfeld character just aged so realistically. It was kind of like I wouldn't, like.
It was just scary looking.
Right, like I knew I was watching Michael Fassbender, but this guy, who I'm not familiar with him as an actor, I was like,
well, he was in A Serious Man, and he was in Boardwalk Empire. Arnold Rothstein.
I mean, he was unrecognizable though. He like I felt like it was a bunch of actors surrounded by the actual Andy Hertzfeld. But the other Michael Fassbender was great. Seth Rogen was there. He was good, but he
did have some good scenes. I felt like he held his own.
He held his own, but I feel like maybe a better choice could have been made. But I don't know.
Jeff Daniels actually surprised me too. I think I've seen him in a bunch of roles where I've just kind of like, okay, it's Jeff Daniels. I feel like he did actually. He impressed me in this one a lot.
Same.
As
I wanted to hate
John
him
Scully
because I was like, Aaron Sorkin's writing it.
Newsroom, yeah.
He's in Newsroom, and he's kind of slipped him in here, and he looks just Jeff Daniels.
Yeah.
Playing, but he does a great job. The biggest problem that Mike was talking about earlier is this IPA is really getting to me. It's got a bite. Is the Joanna Hoffman or the Kate Winslet character. I thought in the first press conference, there's virtually no accent. I think she just has a spacey kind of dialect almost. And there's even a part where she literally talks to Steve Jobs' daughter, and she's like, "I know you like the way that I talk, or you admire the way that I talk, or whatever." And it was like what? Just spaced out kind of. And then all of a sudden it cuts into the next product release, the second one, and she's like, "Oi, Steve, Jobby!" It drastically changed for me. I mean,
it was more pronounced than the other ones, which also almost doesn't make sense because those are later chronologically. Yeah. So even as a forward-speaking person,
right,
the accent would start to be getting better as you went on.
And it's just like you said, what order did they film these in?
Yeah. I picked up on it a little bit when I was watching it, but I didn't think it was that pronounced where it really bothered me. I thought her performance was great.
Oh, it was, but
and especially in the product launches where you did notice her accent, you were because it is a tough accent to do because it's not just a full on accent. It's the accent of someone who's been here for a while, been assimilated into American culture, and has almost started to lose that accent. But there's just tiny hints of it here and there when they pronounce things a certain way, and that's kind of what I attribute it to not hearing it as much in the first product launch. Is maybe just those lines didn't have the phrases for her to say that would be more emphasizing that accent at all.
But here's how it affected the movie for me is that I thought Steve Jobs all of a sudden now that he's left Apple and he's doing Next, I thought he got a new assistant.
You thought it was someone different?
Yeah, I thought he got a new foreign girl or something. He had the American Apple girl, and now he's got some foreign sort of person. And then it affected the movie for me until I looked it up.
Think about it that way.
Yeah, and so that could definitely have a huge impact. But let's talk about the Ashton Kutcher movie a little more, because I know you watched this, and then you watched the Kutcher.
Literally directly after. I came home and I was it was all I was thinking about was let me just look on Netflix, see if Jobs is on there. And it was, so I watched it literally right away. Mm-hmm. It is starkly different from this. I think the biggest thing is that the portrayal of them. Michael Fassbender he really plays Steve Jobs kind of just its own person. Right. He tries to, capture some of the nuances of Steve Jobs, but it wasn't really an impersonation of Steve Jobs where Ashton Kutcher's impression it's what it is. It's an impression you would do for comedy.
Right.
Like it's really over the top, like even down to like the way he walks, which it just doesn't come off as convincing. Plus, it's hard to watch Ashton Kutcher and not think of like Kelso in like
no,
that
definitely.
'70s show. Like,
But wasn't that like okay? Like in I know like the
Cooch.
the Cooch movie wasn't as hard on Steve Jobs.
Oh, not at all. Like they kind of painted him as like a pretty good guy,
Right.
like overall. Like especially with the scene I was talking about with his daughter. Like he's just kind of like, hey, like what's going on? I'm your dad. Like whereas like in this movie, it's obviously like a big part of the movie, like this strained relationship that he has with his daughter, like not even acknowledging her
Right.
as like his daughter for a long time.
And I think that was just because that was so close to like post mortem.
Yeah.
That they felt like they had to like paint him in a.
Well, I think it's also, I mean, if you didn't know this stuff about Steve Jobs that is in the book, I guess, and then in this movie, like, I thought Steve Jobs was just kind of like the cool guy from Apple.
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
And you think of him as this great guy that, I mean, he really did. He affected American culture and, you know, worldwide culture just with the products that he put out. So you kind of, I think as a filmmaker, you're probably thinking, all right, we have to make this biopic about a great American. Whereas that's the thing that I did admire about this film is that it was not, or Steve Jobs, the newer one, Michael Fassbender one, it was not afraid to, you know, kind of say, well, Steve Jobs was kind of an asshole. And
Oh no, exactly.
he created some great things, but that was also kind of his flaw was that he was more focused on the things he was creating. That's even like a line in the movie, like,
Right.
the best things about you should not be the things that you create.
Right, yeah. And I mean, I know I didn't personally watch the Cooch movie, but I know my parents watched it, and they're pretty generous about every movie review that they do for me. But they were like, Joey, it was bad.
It was not good.
It was bad.
It was pretty much as bad as you'd
Yeah.
expect
And-
when you hear the line, "Oh, Ashton Kutcher is going to play Steve Jobs."
Right, and it wasn't that some sort of like request, or I guess people put like the pictures next to each other and like he really looked like Ashton Kutcher when he was like young.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's some scenes where like they're like sort of going into the territory of Steve Jobs being an asshole, and he's like yelling at employees, but you're just like, this is just Kelso yelling at people. Like, I can't be mad at you, Ashton Kutcher.
The only part of that movie that I've watched is like just a YouTube clip of like that was cut out just like a meme, and it was like, "Sir, fonts don't matter. Get out! Get the fuck out of here!" Just, I was like, "Oh, cool." But yeah, my parents watched that. They didn't like that.
And they tried. I mean, they tried to just paint him as like the good guy and like the separation that happens, and like,
Right.
Whereas in the newer Steve Jobs with
He's
Michael
obvious,
Fassbender,
yeah, it's
I mean, and you
manipulative, yeah.
realize, yeah, he's manipulating the press, he's manipulating other people, and he's also just kind of like ignorant of like his own flaws and stuff. So when like these bad things happen to him, you're like, all right, well, that's kind of expected. Whereas in Jobs with Ashton Kutcher, you're like, oh, you kind of feel bad for Steve Jobs, like
Right, yeah.
when he gets canned from Apple and all this stuff, like it's some, you know, big thing. And also the scope of that was just big because it kind of covered like, it starts off with the release of the iPod.
Right.
So like old Ashton Kutcher with like makeup and shit like waddles out onto stage and pulls an iPod out of his pocket, and then literally like the entire crowd is just like erupting into applause, and he's just kind of like basking in that, which is just like so vastly different from everything that you see in the new Steve Jobs, or just because you don't see the actual product launches, you just see leading up to before it, where it's just all these people being like, you're a piece of shit, you're an asshole, like these are the things that you're doing wrong, be a better person. And then Jobs is just like people being like, oh, you're the greatest, you're so smart, you're so good, you're a genius, Steve Jobs, we love you.
Right, yeah. And I mean that's the thing is that I mean I think I showed this like my parents watched this after I showed them The Social Network, which I don't show my parents a lot of films, but I think I was very adamant on that. Like I was just like, you guys have to see like this is an important part of film. Of contemporary film is The Social Network. It
is hard to watch this movie and not compare it to Social Network. I mean, if not just for, even if it wasn't Aaron Sorkin that had written both of them, just the fact that it's kind of like a tech giant, like, you know, Steve Jobs, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, like they're kind of relatable just because, you know, being in the tech industry and affecting our lives the way they did.
Oh, definitely. And
but I feel like Social Network kind of, it tapped into like the way that like just the more personal side of like Mark Zuckerberg and the way that like we can all relate to Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh, definitely.
Just, you know, like we all, you know, we do things to impress our exes or to get someone back when we're creating. Whereas like I think Steve Jobs just as a character is a little bit less relatable, where you're like, well, I'm not that much of an asshole. Like I would acknowledge my kid, and like he's not even like really doing products and creating stuff for any kind of personal reason,
Right.
like Mark Zuckerberg is. Like he's just doing it to create stuff.
And that's how I think I want to like round this all out, is that the end of The Social Network and the end of Steve Jobs the film are very different. And they're written by the same person, whereas Mark Zuckerberg's character, he's still the same guy. He's still the same guy, but a ton of shit has happened to him, and he's still
hung up on his ex. Still
he's waiting for that friend request
yeah.
from his ex, who that's the first scene of the film, is like. And then with this, and I'm sorry, it's a spoiler alert, but it's again, it's a bio. You know, it's like an autobiography sort of thing.
Spoiler alert: Steve Jobs dies.
But he's
not alive anymore.
But again, spoiler alert. But the last scene in the movie is Steve Jobs is like, oh, we go on at the exact time. We're a fucking computer company. We go on at like
throughout the movie, he keeps saying that we're never late. We're never late.
We go on at like however 100. Like it's gonna cost your job if this is not okay by the time it goes on. And then the last one, he's like, I love my daughter. And he like follows her up onto like the roof of the building, even though like the conference should have started like a minute ago or something. And he's like, I want to read your shit. Like I want to read the writing you do for Harvard. And then he's Kate Winslet comes out and she's like,
we gotta go.
Yeah, we gotta go. And he's like, dude,
I want to put music in your pocket.
The funniest part of this film is he goes, and he like hesitates. He's like, I want to put music in your pocket. And it was just like the most awkward line ever. And she's like, what? And he's like, I'm sick of tired of you. Listen to that Walkman. It's big and clunky. It has bad design. I want to put...
Although I did like that, and I thought there was a little like nuance of like character development there, where like earlier in the other product launches, like he's like, all right, we're gonna move like 1 million new units in 90 days. Like he was just always expecting these things. When he's explaining the kind of potential iPod idea that he just came up with to his daughter, he's like, we're gonna have 1,000 songs, well maybe 500, and that was kind of like a little of like him, tampering his expectations, learning to be like a more reasonable person, which I kind of liked in that ending scene there. Like,
but for me personally,
it was it was a little over the top.
At this point, Coldplay is fucking
blasting,
like shaking the speakers, and he just followed up with like I want to put music in your pocket. Like it sounds like a weird pickup line that he's shouting to his daughter at the parking garage, and it's got that bullshit kind of like wink and nudge like if he like looked at the camera and said, I invent the iPod in the future, like it wouldn't surprise me. Like obviously that's not what happened. Like all of this is fabricated, but totally could have happened, but that didn't happen.
My counter to that is that the worst version of that is the Ashton Kutcher movie, where it literally opens with him like coming out and like showing the iPod, and like the entire theater just like erupting in applause. Like he's like the greatest thing that has ever happened to like humankind to invent like the iPod.
Right.
Which is kind of like where every like good thing that I feel about this movie comes from, is that, well, it wasn't the Ashton Kutcher Jobs movie. Which is not a great standard to hold in a movie too.
But it's an interesting movie. The way it's structured, the way it's shot. I mean, we didn't even talk about like the film grain in the first. Like,
trying to
part,
kind of capture that like 1984
which
feeling.
I really liked, like looking at it in the trailer. But once it was in the movie, it was getting a little annoying.
It was weird because they were still doing like, especially when he's in like his green room or his dressing room, they were doing like this kind of like very modern like twisting around like camera angle, like where it's just kind of in constant motion, kind of going around the characters, which is not something we really used in like 1984. Like that's clearly like a more modern camera technique to be kind of like circling around the characters to give it more motion and to make it more energized as a scene. But it's kind of like they just did that with modern camera techniques and then slapped some film grain on it. And it's 1984. I would have rather they actually,
and it was accompanied
if they were going to go for it in terms of the film grain, then like actually try to capture like 1984 camera techniques.
Right. And that's what I would have liked. A film that does that is, I won't even get into it. Fucking phenomenal film. It's called Computer Chess, it's about like the development of like computer chess, and essentially computer becoming like smarter than man. And like everyone's like, well, that won't happen for a really long time. And it takes place about this tournament where like the best chess players in the world play against a computer, and like this is the year that like they lose. It's a super wild, out there like mumblecore film. It's in black and white. It's got some like really trippy scenes in it. But they do
Never
that.
heard about that.
It's by Andrew something. He does a ton of mumblecore films. You in particular would like it. Definitely check it out. I think it's on Netflix. I don't want to say that. But anyway, talked a lot about this movie. I think it's time to see how many
Time to put some fingers up.
are you holding up? That's like if we ever have a game show.
It would be a horrible game
It
show.
would be a fucking
Just two
horrible
college kids drinking.
What? These
trying to hold
families
up
watch
fingers.
these kids destroy their livers. So I want to go first.
All right, let me hear it.
I haven't seen. So this is. I mean, we've done Spectre so far, and that's a more Hollywood movie. This is something I definitely believe that will be up for Best Picture.
Oscar consideration, so I
This
think we
is-
have to hold it to a different scale.
Right. However, I haven't seen a lot of movies this year. It's still early in the year. I think this is the best movie I've seen so far. And I want to give it a 4.
All right.
I was about to give it a 4.5, and I said,
Ooh, the
yeah,
first 4.5, I don't
that's
know.
no. I want to give it a 4. What about you?
I think a 4 is fair. I mean, it's better than the Ashton Kutcher movie. Which is
But just like think of it like 2015.
But they were made so close together. Like Ashton Kutcher was maybe 2013. Like they really didn't start pushing it until like 2014. I felt like I wasn't hearing things about it. Yeah, I think 4 stars is probably fair. Like it was not an excellent movie. I would probably go back and watch it again.
Are you gonna give it 4 stars though?
I'm leaning towards it. I think I have to. I think 3.5 is
3.5 sounds low for this movie. It's
because it's like the parts that I did like, I absolutely loved. I thought the acting was phenomenal through. I was fully engaged throughout it, and it was just like little like editing things that I didn't like like the Coldplay song at the end. I didn't mind the way the story arc turned out in the end, with it being like a happy ending, and him kind of being a better person. I thought that worked for me, especially
it felt out of place though in the whole arc of the film though. I don't know.
But in terms of like a traditional story arc, like I mean, it kind of they were able to work an actual story arc into where the climax was obviously like the final product launch.
Right.
The biggest shit was being hurled at him, from people before the product launch, like the stuff that was coming out, and then it was just him rising above it, be like, you know what, I am actually going to be a decent father and I'm gonna take an interest in my daughter's life. And they set up these things in the first 2 product launches about like you can't be late. Blah blah blah, like, and he just he's able to turn those things on his head and come full circle and be a better father. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with a 4. It was a good movie. I had a few minor things that I was a little bugged by in terms of editing, but it's not enough to stop me from giving it 4 fingers.
4 whole fingers. And I know we've already gone past a lot of the time that we wanted to, but I just want to say one more thing. Michael Fassbender always brings it.
Oh yeah,
I know I said this about Daniel Craig, but Daniel Craig's in a different. Michael Fassbender's in a different league.
Yeah.
He just fucking brings it. Like, and it doesn't. And that was like the dude at work who was like, man, I just knew I was watching Michael Fassbender the whole time. He didn't even look like Steve Jobs. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
He just fucking brung it. He made himself Steve Jobs. Like,
he created a new character out of Steve Jobs, what he knew about him, like. Which is kind of, it's what I look for in a biopic. I hate in a biopic when it's just like a guy wearing like makeup to look like a guy and like doing an impression, like, because that's not acting when you're doing an impression. That's comedy at that point.
Right,
like,
and that's where they went wrong with the, like, oh, who looks like Steve Jobs when he's younger? Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, that was your first mistake. Putting a Macklemore song in your trailer was the second mistake.
Which Macklemore song did they put in?
It was like, we're gonna know, it's all on the ceiling. Like the ceiling can hold us.
Yeah.
It was like, wait, did you just write that for $1,000 or $1 million? God. This idea has really gone in my bloodstream.
No, No, yeah, like I mean, Ashton Kutcher when he's playing him, like it's like when he did his studying for the movie. He just watched footage of Steve Jobs, and rather than like trying to get inside Steve Jobs' head, he was like, okay, how does Steve Jobs like walk, and how does Steve Jobs like carry himself?
He also went to the hospital for eating nothing but fruit. Which Steve Jobs did?
Ashton Kutcher tried to method act as Steve Jobs.
He tried to method act
because that's what makes Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is just eating fruit,
and he went to the fucking hospital because of that. Yeah.
What? Because it's bad to just eat fruit, or
yeah, it's a fucking terrible way to live. That's why he died of cancer too. Is because he's like, I want to try an all natural approach to fighting cancer, and guess what? It killed him. Yeah, well, it was kind of like his cancer wasn't that bad actually, and I think
he made it worse by just eating fruit.
He was like, I'm just gonna eat fruit and take this all natural kind of. It's your choice to do that. I'm not making fun of him for it. I am, but but that
All right, so I think we've given this film
a 4. 4 fingers.
4 out of 5 fingers.
4 out of 5 fingers. Best rating we've given so far.
Yeah, out of
episode 2. Yeah,
high praise.
But all right, yeah.
I think that's it.
4 out of 5 fingers. This has been How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. My name is Joe,
and I'm Mike. And eat your fruit or don't. Hey everybody, Mike here. I just wanted to say thanks for listening and to remind you that we'll be releasing episodes weekly on Thursdays, so be sure to stalk us via all the platforms I'm about to list so you won't miss an episode. Here we go. You can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and the podcast app by searching How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? You can follow us on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/HowManyFingersPodcast. You can tweet us on Twitter at HMFPodcast. You can check out our official website at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. And we do have a YouTube page, but YouTube hates anyone who isn't Smosh and won't let us set a custom URL for our page. So you'll have to refer back to any of the sites we've already listed to find our YouTube link. And that's all for the moment. And don't forget, we'll be back next week with our drunken review of Steven Spielberg's Bridge of Spies.